you, Abdel Dayem, you are with the Committee to Protect Journalists. We see why it's so important to get word out of Syria. Yet talk about the situation for reporters in Syria, and talk particularly as well about Dorothy Parvaz.
Well, the Syrian government is doing everything it can in an attempt to control the narrative, in an attempt to institute a media blackout. Dorothy Parvaz's arrest almost 10 days ago is simply the latest episode in this ongoing attempt. Having said that, the Syrian government's attempts are futile in a way. It is simply not possible in this day and age with the proliferation of mobile technology and video cameras on every single cell phone virtually, and the sheer number of people out on the streets to snuff out every last piece of video, audio, and still photography. And at the end of the day, it almost doesn't matter if professional journalists are on the ground or not. Obviously, journalists want to get into Syria. Local Syrian journalists want to go out onto the streets and interview people. And the government has made it very difficult, if not impossible, for people to do that. But that hasn't snuffed out regional or international reporting on Syria. It is a huge story. It is a newsworthy story, and this program and every other program will continue to cover it. The Syrian government's attempt to institute this media blackout will really do nothing to change that dynamic ultimately.
And talk about Dorothy Parvaz, the reporter who now reports for Al Jazeera. She came into Damascus, was immediately detained. In fact, her family didn't actually know what happened to her for days.
Yes. Well, we now believe that Ms. Parvaz was detained at the Damascus airport. As far as we know, she didn't violate any Syrian laws. She didn't commit any crimes. She was held incommunicado by the government for 5 days. It took the government 5 days to merely acknowledge that she is in their custody. That, of course, is worrying. But then again, we're used to that from the Syrian government. Virtually every single journalist, whether be they a local journalist or an international journalist, when they get arrested or detained by the Syrian government, are eventually, at least initially, held incommunicado. Local Syrian journalists are usually held for, on average, for longer periods of time, are mistreated more so than international journalists. But the point remains that everybody gets detained, at least initially, incommunicado. And that period can range from a few days, well into the weeks, and sometimes over a month. Some of the Syrian journalists being held right now as we speak have been held for numerous weeks, in some cases 5 or 6 weeks.
Who are the other reporters?
There's about a handful of Syrian journalists that are being held. There was an international journalist, an Algerian journalist who was working for Le Monde, and a number of other French publications who is being held for a while. He was just released a number of days ago. Right now, Dorothy Parvaz is the only international journalist being held, alongside about a handful of local journalists. Of course, there's a revolving door policy, so as they release a few journalists, they arrest some more. And as they release some journalists, they're expelling others out of the country. So far, the Syrian government has expelled 5 Reuters journalists, 2 AP journalists, and close to a dozen Arab journalists at various points through this uprising that is now in its 7th week.
You're here in New York, Mohamed. Have you contacted the Syrian consulate or embassy?
Well, we are in touch with all actors in this situation. So we're in touch with the Syrian authorities. We're usually in touch with the employers of these various journalists. When possible, we're in touch with their family members. And what we really try to do here is to give the best advice possible to the families and employers of these people. But then when we're in touch with the government, we urge them to really respect their international obligations, respect their own domestic laws. And in the case of Ms. Parvaz, for example, if the Syrian government believes she has broken any law, they need to arrest her and announce that she's been arrested, not hold her incommunicado for 5 days, and charge her with a crime, or let her go. They have to decide. They can't have it both ways.
Mohamed Abdel Dayem is with the Committee to Protect Journalists. We're going to ask him to stay because